Will Tamil Nadu follow the Kerala precedent and brace for restrictions on online film reviewers? This question after the Tamil Film Producers Association, Active Film Producers Association, this is one part of the Producers Association, moved the Madras High Court seeking a ban on online YouTube film reviews for 3 days after a film is released. The producers argue that reviewers run systematic negative campaigns for some films without giving the audience a chance to make up their minds, and hence a cooling off period after a film's release must be enforced to let the audience make their mind up on it. While the Madras High Court asked some tough questions on whether this would be infringement of freedom of speech and how the court could interfere in this matter to the petitioners and refused an interim order imposing a ban, it has asked the centre and the state governments to file their responses. Remember, the Kerala High Court in 2023 had imposed restrictions on film reviews, and the Tamil Nadu Active Film Producers Association moved the court triggered by the blockbuster disaster of actor Surya's Kanguva, which was one of the most expensive films made in Tamil cinema with a reported budget of 350 crores. Producers and filmmakers blame negative campaign against the film and personal attacks against the stars as one of the reasons, amongst many others, for the film's failure. So is a ban the only way out, and is it a fair solution? Joining me this evening, Khushbu Jain, advocate at the Supreme Court, actor Sanjana Galrani, and noted film critic Lata Srinivasan. To all three of you, we've had this conversation before, and I want to go first to you, Sanjana Galrani. How do you distinguish, and this is a question we've posed before as well, how do you distinguish between the good, authentic reviewer and one who's running a negative campaign? A, and if you're going to get a ban on reviews for 3 days after a film is being released, can it be practically implementable on social media and in online platforms? Quick response from you.
I think the mainstream reviewers, the mainstream newspaper and mainstream channels are somebody whom no one can stop, because there has to be a freedom of speech, there has to be a freedom of opinion. But yes, when it comes to the reviewers who are just very small, I feel bad for them because somewhere they will lose their career. But on the other hand, if films win, if films do really well, and if these obstacles are really removed from the way, then the industry grows and there are more opportunities worldwide that happen. There are more distributors get to earn money, more technicians get to earn money on the ground level, more actors get work, more and more films happen if the producers win. So looking at the larger picture, I would be really happy if the unauthentic reviewers are really taken off their rights of reviewing, and I hope that this really works out in a right
Sanjana,
manner.
The problem really is this unauthentic reviewers that you say. It's easy to say that term, but how is it going to be practically possible to implement that? And before I get to Lata, who's also made her points very firmly on this issue, Khushbu Jain, from a legal point of view, how do you restrict somebody who, you use Twitter, you use your YouTube, how do you restrict somebody from commenting on a film that they've just come out and watched? And how do you restrict and demarcate between these unauthentic reviewers running a negative campaign vis-a-vis somebody who's an authentic reviewer? Well, it seems legally a very, very difficult task to do that.
Absolutely. See, the entire heart of this debate lies in the aspect of freedom of speech and expression, which in a way is a cornerstone of your democracy. And when I say freedom of speech and expression, it does give you an aspect where you can, it guarantees you the right to express your any reviews or any part of it, which is part and parcel of your speech and expression. Now, this freedom of speech and expression is not an absolute right, but that absolute, the exclusion also one has to see very clearly and categorically that they come on the aspect of whether it comes into A, B, C, D criteria, that is hurting the national security, or it's going to create a law and order situation, and so on and so forth. But nowhere it in a way bans my freedom of speech and expression on the aspect that if I am watching something and I want to put a review, whether it can be a critical review, that is my absolute fundamental right under Article 19(1) of Constitution. That's number one. Number two, the demarcate part of it, or questioning or putting a personal comment on somebody who's associated with the movie. It can be actors, it can be directors or producers for that matter. That's where the law 376 clearly
We
talks
seem to have
about that.
lost the line with Khushbu Jain for. Khushbu, I think your line seems to be freezing up. Maybe we can get that sorted. Yes, maybe we can get that sorted, and we'll come back to that question because, there are multiple layers to it. There are reasonable restrictions, and a negative campaign, a malicious negative campaign against a film ought to be stopped as well, Lata. But how do we demarcate that? It's an extremely difficult line to tread on social media between protecting somebody's right to say something about a film or any other aspect, and B, to protect a film from such a negative campaign. I mean, it's quite a difficult act to balance out.
Absolutely, Raghav. I think the fundamental thing when we talk about freedom of expression is that just as the filmmaker has the right to make a kind of film that he wants, right? The audience, whoever so it may be, whether it's from the somebody from the media or a regular audience goer, has a right to express his or her opinion about the film, whether they like it or not. So I think the freedom of expression applies to both of them, right? Now, when the Tamil Nadu, Active Producers Association says, positive reviews can be given, immediately after the film, but no negative reviews should be given. I mean, that doesn't even make any logical sense, right? And another important aspect is that you have to see is that there are a lot of fan wars, fans of Ajit versus fans of Vijay versus fans of Surya, who also tend to put up negative reviews and stories, and because it's their hero versus another hero and so on and so forth. How will you control all this? It's just impossible because social media is an individual person's expression. They have every right to use it, whether they use Twitter or Insta or YouTube, so on and so forth. So how does how do the producers think they can control it? It just doesn't seem logical at all, this whole argument.
You're making a very strong point. It doesn't seem logical at all. Khushbu Jain, we lost you for a bit. From a legal point of view, how do you then protect, while we want to protect the freedom of speech of the reviewer to put out whatever they want to say, how do you then protect a filmmaker from a malicious negative campaign? Because there are producers, Khushbu, who accuse that if some of the reviewers are not given money or are not treated well, they tend to purposely go out and run a negative campaign against a film, A, and B, also come up with incendiary attacks on certain stars and be very, very virulent in their observations on certain stars, making personal attacks. How do we then protect them?
See, we need to separate. I absolutely agree with you, and I understand what you're saying. We need to separate the aspect of my freedom of speech and expression as a viewer who can have a critical review, and that is a fundamental right which is guaranteed under the Constitution under 19(1)(a). That's a separate issue. Now, the issue that comes is people indulging into writing something which is personal or which is defamatory to actors, or it can be to directors or people associated with the movie. Now, that's where come in that you have Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, which specifically deals with defamation as a punishable offense. There are penalties that can be imposed. There is an aspect of imprisonment, number one. Number two, if there is a systematic use of technology on platforms where you try to impose something, to do something which can have a negative impact and which can get into harmful or impact into the sale of specific something, that also you can put in that quantum of amount that is being, because of which you have lost that amount, and you can put that as a part of that defamation and claim that amount from the person who's been done so. But putting a blanket ban on a social media,
these are
my review is something which is impractical and takes away your basic fundamental right of freedom of speech and expression, which is guaranteed in the Constitution.
You made a very strong point. Sanjana Galrani, how do we, actors are also enormous influencers, and perhaps the film industry has the power of influencing. Now, if the film industry comes together and wants to protect itself, a reviewer may not stand a chance on the social media universe. Unfortunately, is it cracks within the film industry itself which aid and abet such negative campaigns and such personal attacks? And should the industry first look inside for a solution before trying to go down and start banning social media reviewers? Quick response from you.
I have been a victim of the system myself. I was brutally trolled and in a particular situation, and I was pulled into a legal battle, and everything which was wrong and everything which was untrue was written. And I had no other choice but to go to the court and take a stay, not just on the social media reviewers, but also on the media, saying, if you're writing anything about me, write legitimate. Otherwise, don't write at all. You know, the same way, if you're watching a film, if you like the film, you want to write something legitimate, you write. If you don't like the film, you can just write that, okay, the film is an average film or something like that, but you cannot go down to the neck of the actor or to the neck of the director and criticize them to the grave, saying, okay, you made the worst film on the planet and this film has not been worth watching for a minute, and commit a suicide, but don't go and watch this film. This is the kind of reviews we are talking about when we are talking about banning really mean reviewers who are misutilizing the social media, where people literally say, go commit suicide, but don't go and watch that film. Imagine the plight of the producer who has invested so much money. If you make such derogative comments on any film, what happens to the producer and what happens to the future of the film industry? So there has to be a line which has to be drawn. There has to be a line which has to be drawn when you're reviewing a film.
But
That's
Sanjana,
what
there's
is
also
the point which is being trying to convey over here.
No, you made a strong point, but Sanjana, there's also the question of the person who's purchasing the ticket to go watch a film, right? So he's bought a product. Now, if he doesn't like it, he has the right to write whatever review is there. If you don't like an Uber cab ride, you're going to write a review as sharp as possible. Most consumers.
A film also has a life.
If he's going to say something,
a film is made
it could
with
be
a lot
in
of
jest, right?
passion. You know, like if you don't like a human being, if you don't like a human being,
right.
you can't brutalize that person saying he's a terrorist, he's a thief or whatever. You can just say, I don't like this person and get done with it. But you cannot go and make personal attacks to kill that person's image. Similarly, you cannot make personal attacks to kill the film.
Absolutely.
You don't like the film, fine. You can just review it saying it's not a great film.
Right.
That is acceptable because that is the truth. But you cannot go down and tarnish the film and kill it by its neck.
Lata, finally... No, I get what the point you're making, but Lata, ultimately, it's also the fact that stars themselves try to make themselves bigger than life, which is why they get that kind of a reaction as well. So there is a flip side to this argument as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think there is a flip side to it, like you said, because stars, also start believing in a larger than life image that they have. And they want everybody to, worship them and idolize them. And they believe that every single movie they make is a fantastic film, right? Now, I really don't know how grounded they are in reality, because I think filmmakers also have a responsibility to make good cinema. If you make a bad film, you have to also accept the verdict that it's a bad film. If you make a good film, people are going to laud you, appreciate it. For instance, you've seen Lucky Bhaskar and Amaran, which are still running in theaters. So I think, it's both ways. What has happened to Kangua is unfortunate, but it should not be that this is the cornerstone for everything going forward. It's just one incident, isn't it, at this point?
Right. Right, important point that you make there. A good film can survive any review, but thanks to all three of you for joining us for this very interesting conversation. We'll keep a close watch of how that case progresses at the Madras High Court.